Hello, Something Guys and Gals. This is Something Guy 912 back once again for your weekly deluge of odd architecture as we finally complete another chapter in the Half-Life 2 series with D1_Canals_13. The last of the water hazard chapter that I've been on for what feels like 6 months now. Noting that I'm completing this chapter on this map, I have some other announcements about future projects going forward after the analysis. So with that out of the way, let's hazard these waters one last time. Alright, and now we are properly in game, and to keep a note again, just keep in mind, the in-game map that I mentioned will be of importance for this map in particular, in terms of the consistency of the layout, as it's already been inconsistent so far. Another thing to keep in note about the outward area, or as you would call it, an arena, because this is basically an arena for the Hunter Chopper boss fight, in quotation marks, because, you know, you have a bunch of these giant boats scattered about, and this will be important considering the overall layout of this area. Now, some other things to keep in note of the peculiar things that are present and scattered about on this map. First thing that I noticed was this pipe that was just kind of randomly jutting out here, which seems to only exist just to hide some goodies underneath. And then the other thing I noticed was these sets of planks that are above these two stone pillars here. And I don't know how this got up here. The only speculation is that possibly when the water got higher, like maybe on a high tide, maybe like the water hit a wave and like drafted the wood up here, but it would have to be an incredibly powerful wave for the log to get up this high. And the water would just have to be like high in general, but as we'll figure out throughout the rest of this map, like basically a pretty concrete conclusion as to what the water level should have been, at least for this map. Possibly would be inconsistent with the architecture of the presumed water level of the prior maps, but for this map there is like a hard line in the sand as to where the water level should be, and where it is would not match for this stick being up here. Now, of course, we get to a point, the helicopter comes out, and obviously it would shoot at me, but I have no target on, so it's just going to it's kind of cute. It just constantly just veers back and forth throughout the arena. I don't know, I just find that a little cute, like, oh, where's the person I'm supposed to shoot at? I can't find him, you know, in a way. So we're just going to let him do his thing. And there's not much else to say about the remainder of the arena, because it's just more of these, like, weird stone textures, a few containers, which, with the presence of the boats, like, the containers aren't too out of the ordinary. Although, a container that I find very peculiar to me is one that is stationed these logs up here. Now, this is the ramp that you use to drive the airboat off to get into this floodgate. But have you ever wondered how this ramp is set up? So underneath we have the container, and it's like partially submerged into the ground too. It's like just clipping into the ground this way, which is already a problem. But if you look up, you can see the logs are kind of just like precariously floating. Now, of course, it's water, so of course it would float, but the nature of these logs being set up in this fashion, they're basically almost like welded onto the container, but they're not moving around. They would be probably shifting off in this way. And not to mention, I imagine the amount of water that this container would be carrying, it wouldn't be jutted up this way. It'd probably just be on the ground. So yeah, this is a little bit impractical in terms of like how this like rudimentary ramp was set to begin with. And then moving back a ways, something to consider too is that these are floodgates for a dam. So this means that the water level would have to be at the level for these floodgates to be of any use, meaning that the water level is lower than where it should be. And we'll just keep that in mind, because if we go back here, we have our favorite little, I don't know, set dressing, the dock planks. And as you can see, the dock planks are not even at the level where they would be useful, but they are much higher than where the water would likely be at, which would probably be like, if I was to use the crossbow for example, it'd probably be like about there, for example. So, yeah. Obviously, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for them to be here, and just their placement in general is a little bit, odd. And then after you destroy the, Hunter Chopper, you have access to the, gate over here, or at least you have the means to open this gate to let your, airboat pass through. Now, again, we have these very, elaborate signal switches, which, again, once again, they are set at where the water level is, as opposed to where the water level should have been before the Combine came around. So it's like, if the water level was where it would be, like, almost all of this would be submerged, making them basically useless. But, you know, that's besides the point. It's really hard to try to figure out, like, the relative water level of these things, but that, you know, with those floodgates in mind, these would be submerged. And then noting this switch here is that it's posted on the outside of this, like, depot for the dam, but there's not a switch on the other side of it. So if you were to, say, have a boat that was inside here and wanted to get out of here, they would have had somebody on the other side to switch this, like, bring this up, as opposed to just somebody on this side with a switch, like, with an equal, like, lever to do that. So I don't know why it would be one-sided in this fashion, as opposed to actually being two-sided. And then, just to get this out of the way, in regards to the in-game map, there are a few more channels that go into this, like, this area of the dam, but the one here is not noted. And the one over here is, I guess, noted by these pipes. So those are the remaining, like, inconsistencies with the in-game map. But as you can tell, with this being essentially an island, like this little island, and then this, like, open arena, with no big, like, dam gates or channels, how did these boats even get here? All the boats that are just smattered about on this battlefield are just here somehow, because there's no way for them to get anywhere else, because the way we came out from was way too small for it to pass through. So I guess these boats didn't really travel that far, you know, when when shuttling goods, I guess. So it's just another thing to keep in mind. And then over here we have more of these dock planes. This one in particular is very peculiar because, of course, this is used so you can ramp your airboat up here, but with the overextension of these sets of dock planks in relation to the water doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because if the water is higher, you wouldn't need two sets of dock planes this way. And also, as another aside, you know, just in case you didn't want to use the airboat, they have this ladder texture that just comes, like, the manner of this, like, ladder texture being in stark contrast to the rotted wood of this dock plank is also just fairly humorous to me. Just like, yeah, I'll just slap that on there, who cares, right? I mean, obviously, most people wouldn't, because it's just for the sake of practicality rather than necessarily for realism. Now, moving on to where the Hunter Chopper docked off on was, you know, your fairly standard helipad drop-off. But this helipad drop-off somehow matched with the dimensions of the Combine Hunter Chopper, even though this is clearly architecture that was here before the Combine came over. So, the implication is the Combine made their Hunter Choppers to accommodate these helipads, as opposed to, you know, the other way around. So that's just a very interesting curiosity. I'm not sure if... I guess I could try to see if I could try to find it. Let's see if I can find... Okay. Just to confirm. So yeah, we have the model of the Hunter Chopper here. And as you can see, yeah, it very much accommodates for this helipad drop-off, which I find very odd in comparison to the fact that this architecture is much older than when this this kind of technology was invented. But again, maybe they just took some pointers from the human design of, like, the Huey Cobras and whatnot. Anyhow, we have this water reservoir, which is a nice little touch, but as you can tell, at least from looking up, there is architecture for a catwalk, but clearly no way to get up here. Like, there's no, like, ladder or anything like that. So, you know, why this is here, who knows. And then inside the warehouse, I like to call this the respite warehouse, since it basically just gives you all the ammo, health, and supplies that you need. Basically, it's essentially preparing you for what's about to come with Ravenholm. But after, you know, your little excursion with the Hunter Chopper. There's not much to say about this warehouse, other than there's these giant shutter gates that are basically useless because of the fact that there's a door here, and the amount of clearance to load or offload goods is very, fairly narrow, so it wouldn't be used for much. It just feels like just something they just want to put in there for the sake of the aesthetic, I guess. Moving on, we have some pathways that lead us to this, I guess, bridge. Although it's funny that the bridge is more of these rotted dock plank assets. But what I always found peculiar about the matter of this pathway is you have that stair here, but there's no pathway, like there's no practical way to get down to this side. You either have to jump off, or you have to go basically the long way around in this fashion. Not even this set of stairs has like a stairway that goes down here. So you just have to either go the long way around or jump off from a pretty awkward height. And we'll move on to the observation post. We have this kickstand for the ladder. Now, I don't know if there'd be a very practical use for this kickstand for the ladder, considering, like, what would... I mean, maybe you could use it for, like, some kind of lifeguard or some kind of, like, service worker to get to the other side or whatever to, you know, check on a boat or whatever, or talk to whoever is channeling goods here. But, I mean, obviously it's just for the sake of gameplay to just, you know, have your airboat be here while you deal with the matter of the floodgate switches and all that. And going down, we have more of these fences, which in this, like, particular small span of the floodgates is very schizophrenic in terms of, like, what direction they want them to be pointing, like outward or inward. Like, you have some that are pointing outward, but then you have some that are pointing inward, and it just seems to be just really, like, they just couldn't make up their mind about it, and it just, you know, as you can see, like, the result of it is very telling, with some of them just colliding into one another. And then, as we go to the switch itself, so, we have these two switches for the gate override. Now, this might not be immediately odd, but there's only two switches for what is presumably 5 separate gates here. And the switch that you use to override to bring this lift up is the only one that actually has, like, this kind of architecture to bring it up. So the rest of these are basically useless. They're just there for show, because there's no way for them to come up in the first place. And then I think the last thing... there's a few more things, actually. On the opposite side of this floodgates, we have this set of area that is covered by fences, but obviously it's covering nothing. So I don't know why this would even be here. I also kind of find it cute that there's a pallet and a barrel here, as though, like, to suggest that somebody would use this area for storage or something like that. When it's like, there would have been no way for... there would have been no way for anyone to bring this here in the first place. And then, the last thing to note is art architecture in terms of sound design, and it's very odd. So, I'm just going to let the audio play, maybe you might be able to hear it. You can kind of hear the sound of, like, rushing water, to imply that water is falling off like a waterfall from this floodgate, as a dam normally would, like Hoover Dam, for example. But there's no water that was channeling through this. So where is this sound coming from? And with that, that is it for D1_canals_13. And that was that for that map and the whole The Water Hazard chapter. Now, As I prime to do whenever I complete a chapter for Half-Life 2, I try to spruce up the variety of these art architecture vids with episodes at other media, and Team Fortress 2 was often the chosen candidate. While that is very much on the table, what I've also planned to do was actually start on the Fight for Sanctuary analysis once I had completed the Water Hazard chapter of these art architecture vids, as I've already am underway to working on just that. So, in the meantime of me making that analysis, I will work on another art architecture vid for Team Fortress 2, as well as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 Plus 2, as that has been on the back burner for the time being. Much in the same way as I intersperse content as I was working on my long-winded Tales from the Borderlands project. Hope this was enough clarification for you, and hope to see you when those videos come around.